Afternoon and good evening. This is Rob Skiff. This is our second session in Woodblock, which is building your own degree without all the debt. What we're going to be doing is Carol Moore will be coming on hopefully a little bit later, but I wanted to give you guys a presentation about different ways to lower the cost of your education. This is directed generally at students, but it's also a way for college administrators and faculty members to start thinking about how to help young people get an education without all the debt. As we know, debt is a huge issue in this country and in higher ed in general. So let's get to it. Oh, by the way, if you have any questions for me, you can send them to questions@oplerno.com, tweet them to @Oplerno. You can also use the hashtag Woodblock, and it would be great if you live tweeted the event or sent some messages to higher ed, the hashtag higher ed. And again, if you need to reach us with Facebook, we have a Facebook group there, and we'll take any questions at the end. So degrees cost a lot of money. As you know, over the last decade, the cost of higher education has increased actually more than healthcare in the United States, and at roughly 6%. Last year, HSBC, which is one of the largest banks on the planet, created a report on the costs of studying abroad in different locations. And they were looking at international education, and the US emerged as the third most expensive option overall. And in doing this research, HSBC looked at tuition costs in the United States. And what we're going to be using is, we're going to be using this figure to basically calibrate this, this presentation and this interesting model. So HSBC put the average annual cost of study in the US at about $36,000 a year, and that includes tuition fees and living expenses. In the US for the 14-15 academic year, they also took a look at state colleges. And in the United States, for those of you who are living outside North America, the US has a system where if you are a resident of a state, you're eligible to receive in-state tuition from a college or university. So I live in Vermont. When I went to the University of Vermont, I was charged an in-state rate. But if someone is coming, let's say, from California, and they enroll at the University of Vermont, they're going to be charged an out-of-state tuition rate. So for last year, the average of state colleges for residents of that state was about $9,000 per year for state residents and $22,000 for everyone else. And of course, this compares to an average of $31,231 at private nonprofit colleges. Now, this is just tuition, remember. That figure above, that 36,000, was tuition and living expenses. Now, we're just going to talk about costs for classes and taking a look at what is delivered academically, rather than taking a look at all those ancillary services that Scott Rank was talking about in the previous presentation. So get out your calculator and a piece of paper, because what I would like, we're going to walk through different kinds of equations, and I'm going to show you how to do these equations for you to figure out how to compare costs in a very different way than generally is listed in colleges and universities across the country. So if you're someone from the age of 16 to 25 and you're looking at going to college, or you're a non-traditional student who is thinking about returning back and taking some courses or getting a degree, again, get a calculator and a piece of paper, and I'm going to show you some ways to really calculate costs and do a price comparison. So when we take a look, we had to come up with a unit of measurement. And in the US in higher ed, generally what we do is we buy our education by paying a semester cost. we pay the tuition, or we pay the tuition in the room and board, and we buy these in sort of 6 month chunks. And it's sometimes very difficult to do price comparisons. And so what I did here was create, I'm not the first person to do this, which is taking a look at what's the cost per credit. Okay, so in the US, it takes 120 Carnegie unit credits to earn a BA or a BS. So when you're taking courses, generally the courses are 3 credit classes, and you take about 40 of them and you earn your BA or your BS. Okay. Now tuition is roughly, if you look at the number of years that you're going to school, while most people sometimes finish school in 5 years, you always are taking sort of those 3 credit classes that make up your educational plan. So tuition times 4 divided by 120 is the cost per credit. Okay, so you basically divide 100 and So for example, tuition at a private college or university is $31,231 a year. So if you times that by 4, the cost for a BA or a BS is $124,924 on average from a private college or university. That's quite a lot of money. The second step is look at the total cost of total tuition for a BA, BS in terms of, and divide that by 120 credits. So we take the cost of the entire degree, we divide that by 120, and the cost per credit for tuition at a private not-for-profit educational institution comes out to about $1,041 per credit. And when we do that same calculation of the cost per credit, we see different levels that education costs, and we can start to then do a comparison. Okay, so we can do the comparison between here's what a private college on average costs in the U.S. per credit. We can take a look at out-of-state tuition at a public or private college or university, and then we can take it in-state tuition at a public college or university, or sometimes community college credits. Now that's cost per 1 credit. Generally, courses are 3 credits long. So you have to times this by 3, and you'll get your cost for your class. Okay, which is right here. So when you take a look at the cost per class at schools, this is the average in the U.S. So at a private not-for-profit college or university, you've got $3,000. Out of state to $2,300 roughly, and at in-state almost $1,000. So at Oplerno, our classes are generally between $500 and $1,500 a class, and what we do is we use faculty determine the rate of pay, and so you can find exactly what you want in terms of course, and then what you can do is save money on a degree. But you don't have to just do that with Oplerno. Okay? If you want to save money on your degree, remember we used that figure of that $128,000 at the very beginning. What you want to do is take as many transfer credits as possible from your lower cost options. So for example, if you're at a private, not-profit educational institution and you're paying about $3,000 per class, you should be taking a look at some of the lower cost options. Does where you live have a community college or a public university? And take and see if you can fill up those 120 credits, those 40 classes, with some cheaper options. Now, I think that introductory courses should be potentially as cheap as possible, and so if you're taking an intro to bio and an intro to history, or you're taking a general education class, try to find one that is a balance between the least expensive option and the quality of the instruction. And let me run you through a calculation of how much potentially you can save. But first, if you're transferring credit, you have to be careful, because many institutions have all kinds of rules about what courses they'll transfer. They also have a bunch of different rules about what institutions they'll accept those credits from. And one of the things that can really raise the cost of a degree is if you take classes outside the institution that you're in a degree program with, and you find out that those credits aren't going to transfer back to the program that you're trying to get the degree in. So here's a little checklist for you when you're thinking about transferring credit, transferring credit, but also if you're thinking about taking a course from a college or university outside of your program. So contact the registrar's office at the university or college before you start paying to take the class. This is really, really important because the registrar has all of the policies and guidelines at that institution regarding whether the course you take with Oplerno or with another institution or Udemy. Well, Udemy and Coursera are a different case, but Oplerno or some other online platform, whether or not that will count as your for credit for your degree. The second thing is try to get the approval in writing from either the registrar's office, academic dean, provost, or senior administrator. Sometimes people will say, sure, you can do that, and then when you try to formally transfer it, you get into a situation where a chair or faculty member or advisor say that's not possible. So if you're thinking about transferring credit and going through this process, get them to sign off before you pay for the class, and do that by providing that person who's doing the evaluation with potentially who's going to be teaching the class. Present them with the CV, the syllabus, and a little bit later on you can give them documentation of student work. These are really, really critical things to do for you, so you don't end up double paying for courses and classes. Okay, and again, the most important tip, do everything to make sure that your course will transfer before you pay for the class. So, how much will you save? Now, the most important thing about going to college is, of course, getting an education and finding the instruction that you want. But you also have to, of course, think about price, because $128 or $30,000-$60,000 is a lot of money. So the variables in terms of using this system, in terms of how much you're going to save, depends on the difference in price between your college and university cost per credit and the transfer credit cost. And I'll show you some examples of that. And of course, one of the other pieces is what's the number of credits that you can transfer. Each degree program has its own guidelines about the numbers of credits that you can bring in from outside and transfer into a program. And it varies whether you're an undergraduate or a graduate. So when you're looking at entering a undergraduate or graduate program, find out those rules. Really take a look at what's the number of courses that I'm going to be able to transfer. Are they introductory courses? Am I going to be able to transfer in electives? And as much as you can, potentially work with your advisor and, of course, work with the registrar, before you take classes with a college or university outside your program, to make sure that those are going to transfer. So the price difference times the number of transfer credits equals your cost savings. Okay, a really simple equation there. So let's take an example here. An out-of-state student is getting a degree in education from a small premier research university. They pay out-of-state tuition at a cost of $765 per credit. The student decides to spend 4 summers taking 3 courses, so 9 credits online, or at a local community college. This earns the student 27 transfer credits. These cost at $304 per credit hour. How much money does this student save? So that's the question. Now, in this example, 27 transfer credits was used. I've seen policies where colleges will accept 50% of transfer credits into a program, or even sometimes larger. But again, that varies. I wanted to pick something fairly mellow, low level of credits to transfer, so I picked 27 out of that 120. So the difference in cost per credit is $461, and that is the difference between in-state tuition and out-of-state tuition. So taking it at a community college or at some other, at an online institution, we said that cost was going to be about $304. So $461, number of transfer credits is 27. So it's really simple to do the equation. It's 27 times 461 equals $12,000, $12,447 in tuition costs. So a savings in tuition of 13.5% in the cost of degree from what would be charged if you took all of those courses at that university. That's a substantial savings and can make a big difference for people. So I want to give you an example of Oplerno. So if you take the same scenario but use Oplerno, the savings can potentially be even higher. The cost for credit for Oplerno is between $167 and we think about $500. So the difference in per credit courses with out-of-state tuition are between $265 and $598. So this leads a potential savings to be $7,000, between $7,000 and $16,000 in total cost savings. So depending upon the classes you take and the range in price that you get in terms of Oplerno, you can again save substantially on your degree. So I wanted to do a few more. Private colleges and universities can run the gambit between $40,000 and now at a few $60,000 a year. That's quite high. So we're going to use, of course, that average figure. When you run the numbers and you do that same equation that I showed you earlier about taking the difference between cost per credit and using a potentially a lower cost option for those introductory courses or low-level courses, the savings can be quite substantial. So you can, if you, let's say, take those introductory courses at a local community college or online program, you can potentially save almost $20,000 or 15.9% of your degree. With Oplerno, it sort of depends. If you go for the higher level, the higher cost classes that cost $1,500, your savings still is pretty substantial at between 14 and 23, almost 23,500 per course. So other ways to save. Higher ed is costing quite a lot of money. And so what you need to do is a balance. You need to look for high-quality free courses, Coursera, edX, and CodeCamp. Free courses sometimes, well, in many cases, won't transfer to the private not-for-profit higher education institutions. Of course, it depends. Because those courses potentially are not meeting certain academic standards, and Coursera, while it offers certificates, it is backed by these very large universities and prestigious schools, and they have sort of a vested interest in not diluting their brand, but also opening up and creating these free courses that students can transfer in. So try to potentially take those courses, but see whether your institution would start thinking about accepting those courses for transfer credit. Might take a little work, but again, the savings for you can potentially be quite substantial. This other ways to save are, trying to avoid as much as possible taking out higher and higher amounts of student loans to pay for. I mean, paying for your tuition is okay, but living expenses can be pretty tricky, or using it to pay for a computer, etc. Because when I calculated the savings, I only calculated the savings on the cost. When you pay interest on your student loans, the cost of those courses can potentially double, because you're taking out a loan, you're paying it over 10 years, and you have to pay interest on that loan. So while you might think, oh, my degree only cost me, X amount of money, and I have 30 grand worth of student loans, by the time you pay them off, you might have paid a total of $60,000 in student loan debt to pay for those classes. So it can substantially raise the cost. So try as much as possible to avoid taking out extra loans to pay for food, clothing, and shelter, the room and board. As much as possible. Think about if you're younger, living at home, with parents. That's not necessarily the traditional college experience, but later on it's going to save you substantially in terms of the cost of your degree. The other piece is if you're a non-traditional student, you've really got to find programs that will allow you to work while you're going to school, because if you're working, then you can use some of that money to pay for the food, clothing, and shelter, and lower the cost of your degree by not having to take out debt to, again, pay for your living expenses. One of the really interesting things that has developed over the past several years is summer internship credit for undergraduates. Undergraduates can take summer internship credit. Many institutions are also actually paying students for their summer internships. So if you're earning credits that can be applied to your degree, and you're also getting paid for them, that's a great thing. You're not paying for the credit, and you're also getting a stipend to take that summer internship courses. And what I find is that really, really good institutions are also taking a look at life experience credits. Institutions that are really, really innovative and have flexible degree programs. If you can document and show that you have a particular skill, or you've taken something several years ago, you have life experience. Life experience credits are a great way to, again, lower the cost of your program. Okay. So a couple things to remember is, one, college and universities want you to take as many of their classes as possible, because of course that's how they earn their keep. Also, college and universities make most of the money off of intro and low-level courses, which I'll talk about at another time, because they have a small, one or a small number of instructors. They're generally adjuncts, but yet you're paying full rate for them. And finally, higher-priced prestige colleges and universities will not make this process easy at all, because again, they want you to take their material. So most important is look for great teachers and take their classes, because education is all about the great teachers, and so use as much information as you can to evaluate that. So I think, Carol, are you on? Thank you very much for participating. Carol Moore is the president of Burlington College, which is Oplerno's first partner in higher education, and wanted to thank you for participating. And also, can you tell us a little bit about Burlington College and the programs that you have geared towards, producing, self-designed degrees and producing programs. Carol, your mic doesn't seem to be working. Maybe you're on mute. Let me check something. Okay. Hold on one second. Another technical glitch. Carol, your mic is not working for some reason. How about we'll get that fixed up. Let me just check one more thing. Oh, okay. And if I can hear your mic now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, thank you, Rob, for the introduction, and I appreciate your presentation to help guide students to get the best education at the lowest potential cost. And I'm happy to talk a little bit about Burlington College. It was founded just a little over 40 years ago. It was founded in response to community needs. It started with 14 students in someone's living room, and it was in direct response to the needs of Vietnam veterans returning from war. And since then has grown quite a bit and expanded its offerings, but has maintained its roots in individualized programs for student needs. And we do offer an array of liberal arts, more traditional type majors like writing and literature, human services, psychology, but we also offer an array of more art type majors in film and design and film and psychology, and we also offer fine arts and graphic design and woodworking. And we have the only program on the East Coast in transpersonal psychology. But that said, I want to focus on cost and on our individualized undergraduate degree. Students can come and design their own major, which means that they take most of the general education in writing, creative arts, historical perspective, science, math, culture, etc., and then they design their own individual major. They can double major if they choose, or they can take a major with one or two minors. We do encourage students to do interdisciplinary work, but it's up to them with a faculty guide to design their own major. Some of the majors that have been popular in the past are areas like art and social change, media activism, environmental science, literature, media and social justice, philosophy, sustainable studies, etc. The list is quite long, as a student can design their own in basically any field they choose.
And Burlington College was one of the first institutions to really embrace that that whole notion of self-designed, you know, a long time ago.
Yes, actually, that's the way the college started. The veterans that came back from the Vietnam War essentially designed their own majors around a couple of basic theories, and the theory was experience, and experience in the community, and applying what you learn in theory. So there were very strong links to the community and experiential learning. And if we look at cost, as you were talking so specifically to that, the college has always been sensitive to the cost of higher education, even though it is a private institution. And there are a number of things that the college has done. Several years ago, the college decided that as a first-year student entered, that year's tuition would remain with that student throughout their 4 years. So there would be no increase in tuition when they got into their sophomore, junior, or senior year. In addition, for the last 2 years, we've actually frozen the tuition. So this fall, for example, students will actually pay tuition that was established in 2013.
So that's a substantial savings, considering the costs on average for higher ed are rising at about 3 to 6% a year. And so
That's right.
in 4 years, you could see a substantial increase in your tuition costs, which you all are avoiding.
Right. And in addition, then the student saves a significant percentage as they go through the 4 years, because their tuition is fixed at whatever year they enter. In addition, the college has put approximately $500,000 into scholarships for individuals in various areas. And of course, they can get their Pell Grants before taking, a loan. You mentioned, Rob, the cost of room and board, which is significant at many institutions. Burlington has chosen to go a different route. We have housing primarily in the Burlington community, more apartment-style living, so students prepare their own meals, which generally saves them a significant amount of money as compared to a meal plan at a traditional college. And we also price our housing at cost to the college. Most institutions make a surplus on the housing costs, but we chose not to do that. So students save considerable amount there as well. And also, as you mentioned, all of our students actually must have an internship and can have up to 3, and we try to help them identify a paid internship so that they're earning credits, earning experience in their field, and also making some money to pay for their education. And I'm sorry, go ahead, Rob.
So you've one of the things that I was really impressed with Burlington College is about the evaluation and the transfer credit policies that you all have, Carol, because it's it's really good. So could you just talk a little bit about that, and do you see students taking advantage of sort of being able to Burlington College being the hub of their education, where they're getting the advising, where they're getting a lot of the specialized classes that they need. But can you talk a little bit about the way in which you guys are thinking about transfer credits and also evaluation for life experience?
Sure. We accept transfer students with associate's degrees. So we take 60 to 65 credits, and actually we will take as many as 90 transfer credits. They may not all transfer in the exact field that a student may want to pursue, but they are transferred at least as elective credits. So we have pretty liberal transfer policies, and we try and recruit many students from community colleges, two-year state colleges, where, as you mentioned before, they can earn an associate's degree at a bit lower cost and then transfer into Burlington. And additionally, any student, whether they start, year one or whether they start, let's say, at the junior level, they can apply for up to 12 credits of life experience, and we'll take those credits as well. So a student can really transfer quite a bit into the college and complete their degree. So they have a lot of opportunities. We also are very sensitive, since many of our students, actually almost all of our students, work, and some of them work almost full-time. We schedule our classes in blocks of 2 and 3 hours so that a student can schedule work around those blocks of time. And our faculty are again sensitive to this and try to connect students out into the community in their field of study so that they get a double benefit of working and making some money, but also getting some experience in their chosen field.
So, what sort of advice would you give to a student in terms of the different factors to balance when they're starting to look at colleges? Because very soon the fall arrives, and for juniors and seniors in high school, they're starting to take a look at the colleges. But also, that's one potential segment of people who will come to engage in higher education. So could you talk a little bit about what they balance, and then, if you would, what factors should a non-traditional student, so a student who might be a caregiver, taking care of children, or taking care of an elderly parent, or some member of the community, what sort of factors should they be looking at when they're trying to figure out what higher ed option is going to be best for them?
Well, I think if you're looking at a more traditional age student, up to they're in their 20s or teens, I think they may be looking for a full college experience. So they do want to have a sort of a social life, if you will. They may want to live on campus and get that experience. So those are some factors. But to me, the most important factors are the values of the institution, because education is not value-free. Every institution has its own culture, it has its own values, and I think it's very important for a student to understand what that culture and what those values are to see if it's going to be a good fit. And they also need to look at, okay, what is the highest quality I can get for the lowest price? And there, that's very individualized to determine. And these days, I would say that students should be looking for experience built into their education, because the job market is competitive, and you go to employers and they want some experience. And if you can show them a resume where you've had 3 internships and you have 3 letters of reference from the internship placement, then you have a leg up. And that whole issue of fit and culture and values, getting the highest quality education for the lowest cost, and making sure that that education is going to prepare you to get that first job.
Yeah,
For
and I think that only is going to happen if students have much more control over their education. And you know, Burlington College, you know, what you all are doing, you know, you're placing students at the center because you know you do have the student plans, the ways in which they're evaluated, and also the fact that they have so much input into their program. And I think it's at a much higher level than happens at most institutions of higher ed, where you know there's that high touch and where you're working with students to create it, and that is you know the legacy of when Burlington College was started. But that's also the cornerstone of 21st century education, which has to do with customization, high touch, and flexibility. And so long as the standards are rigorous, everything you know works out really, really well. And that's what you all are doing, in my opinion.
It really is, because day one, students come into class and the first thing they do is work with their classmates and their instructor to set their own personal learning goals for that particular class. And that actually goes into their file. And at the end of the year, or the end of the semester actually, you know, the faculty member goes back and sits with students individually and says, well, you know, did you meet these goals? What did you learn, and did you accomplish what you set out to accomplish? So students really must be engaged. They can't sit in the back of the room and hang out in a course here. They have to really take part in their own education, and that's how they're evaluated at the end of the course. They can get a grade if they want it, you know, an A, B, C, D, but standard grading is a narrative evaluation.
We've got a question from the audience, which is, do you still run trips to Cuba?
Cuba. Yeah, and the answer is yes, we still do. There are two options. Students can spend a semester at the University of Havana, or they can opt to take a trip, and most of the trips are 1 week. There are a couple that are 2 weeks, but they can go on a variety of trips, and we offer them in fields such as you know, legal studies, education, agriculture, business, areas such as those. There's another one that's quite popular, is street photography in Havana. So we make up a trip based around student interest and the university itself.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see over the next couple of years how, you know, since things are opening up between Cuba and the United States, about how it opens up, and also you know, with that long-standing relationship, you know, Cuba also has, you know, incredible contacts in Latin America and Africa, and to see how that you know, that expands with the opportunities that, you know, since you guys, you know, were I think one of the only ones who you know, were able to head and do educational trips and exchanges between the U.S. and Cuba. So that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and our faculty are very in tune to the educational value of trips in general. So, for instance, our film studies students go to Lake Placid for a film festival. They'll go out to Sundance, which of course is a famous film festival. And this year we may actually have a trip to Cuba for their film festival. Our fine arts people go to New York. 2 years ago they went to Berlin because our faculty member was doing her own show in Berlin. So the faculty really try to get students, you know, outside of Vermont for the educational value.
Now, are you you all accept, so if I wanted to access those programs and I was a student, I was not a student at Burlington College, you guys are open to that?
Oh, yes. Yes, the students from other universities and colleges or individuals, who just have an interest can certainly go on any of the Cuba trips, and we've taken students from other colleges on some of the film trips as well.
And since you are also accredited by NEASC, New England Association of Schools and Colleges,
Right.
and so the issue of transferring your credits, those credits earned in those classes to another institution, is in many ways a whole lot easier than it would be to transfer those credits if you were with Oplerno.
Yes,
To be blunt, you guys have a higher level of accreditation.
Right, and we've never had a student have problems with, transferring a course. The credits have always been accepted. They may not be accepted for a very particular course, but they're always accepted as general education credits or elective credits.
That's great. Anything else you want to, any questions you have for me, or anything else you want to bring up? Do you want to talk about the master's programs, or you want to wait? Yeah.
Can do that. We have, in addition to the individualized undergraduate program, we have an individualized master's program. It's a new program. It's only 2 years old, but it works on the same premise. Students apply and they sit with a faculty advisor to map out a course of study, and then we recruit faculty either in the area or at some distance who's an expert in the field or fields that the student wants to study, and we connect them. They come to the college for a low residency to start them off, and then they work individually with the faculty members that we assign them. So interestingly, we had a student graduate last year in aeronautical engineering. We have a student coming in this year who's going to study textiles. Many of the students come in the fields of fine arts or psychology, but then there's always a few very unusual ones.
Yeah, and that flexibility of being able to do a self-designed master's program with experts, so that you get your the kind of learning and educational experience that you want. That's really, really exciting. And again, it's one of the few places in the U.S., and I would suspect the world, that has the systems in place to create that type of flexible program. We're really excited to be working with Burlington Colleges. You expand your online presence and offerings, because there's all kinds of different ways in which we can both benefit from a partnership.
Absolutely. We're very excited about our partnership with Oplerno, because this opens up a whole repertoire of experts to our students, both undergraduates and graduates, and a much broader array of course offerings than a small college can provide. And that's what we want to do, is give our students a full array of opportunities to pick and choose what they want to study and with whom.
Yep, and which is all what student-centered learning is about.
Yes.
Well, Carol, thank you so much for coming. We'll see you at the round table at 2 o'clock.
Okay.
Again, sorry for that early technical glitch.
Yeah, no problem.
We'll get them. We'll get that sorted out. Again, sometimes it's a little tough to get those technical glitches sorted out, but the cost of the conference makes it worth it, because it's free.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So we don't have to get too fancy with all that stuff.
Right.
Okay.
Well, thanks, Rob, for inviting me. It was a fun conversation, and I hope folks listening got a lot of good thoughts about how to choose their college.
Now, if you want to contact Burlington College to find out about enrolling as a student in a course or for their programs, what's the best place to email?
Yeah, you just go to the website and you can get a phone number and an email, and that'll take you right into our admissions office, and you can get to the department that you want to talk to right from admissions. So it's a two-call process.
Great. Well, listen, thank you very much, and talk with you soon.
Okay, thank you, Rob.
So